Algorithmic.
I'm going to walk us through what we do at Algorithmic. Timo has already summed it up nicely. Everyone keeps asking, okay, how does it sound like? And how can it sound in the future? I'm going to show a few more demos and then also answer one of the main questions. How can I clone my voice? That's always important. Let's begin, maybe first about us. What does Algorithmic do? So, as has already been said, we take care of the voices and audio creation of podcasts and similar short formats. The emphasis is always on short formats, so that's what already works well and what sounds really good. In the future, the length, quality, and volume will increase even further. And the production without a speaker, without a human speaker, without microphone. Without a studio, just a huge volume to cover, not just one. To create a podcast, but really hundreds or thousands of podcasts in all possible colors and personal compilations.
Und was wir gebaut haben, ist eine Infrastruktur, die eben diesen gesamten Prozess automatisiert, vom Text über die Stimmen hin zu der Musik.
And what we built is one infrastructure that automates the entire process, from text to the voices and music, but also to personalization and the creation of professional podcasts with the audio formats in different forms, with as little overlapping as possible or human manual intervention. That's possible firstly because of the AI voices, so text-to-speech voices either from the catalog or voices which we clone ourselves. The second point is, of course, writing is easier than recording. So text-to-podcast is what we would like to allow and provide the real studio quality, and we offer that as an API. So we don't have a front end, we have an infrastructure that allows publishers or technology players to integrate this engine of audio production into current applications and platforms throughout very easy process. Timo has already mentioned it too. Our focus is on short formats, which were previously not possible. So I don't know how many articles are posted here every day. Probably between 50 and 200 or 300. Of course, that makes it impossibility to set it all to audio, to do it quickly. Or of course, like in case of Story Slash, when the articles are automatically turned into stories to create the audio track there. That's easy. It's just not worth it financially. And that made this case possible through the automatic production. Was wohl nicht ersetzen wollen an nicht. What we don't want to replace and what we sometimes can't replace are the human emotional content and the long formats of content, especially the typical interviews and podcasts in the pure sense. So podcast in the sense of the people with everything around it, with everyone involved in this podcast and with that feel of the podcast.
Wie kommen wir dahin? Also ein großer wichtiger Teil.
Algorithmic.